They thought he was just another slow, useless employee. What they didn't know? He owned the entire company. Daniel Carter pulled the brim of his worn-out cap lower as he wiped sweat from his forehead. 2 hours into his shift and he had already seen enough. The warehouse was nothing like the reports had claimed. Employees were overworked, underpaid, and constantly yelled at. The managers, especially the shift supervisor, Rick Dawson, treated them like garbage. Daniel, disguised as a new worker, had been deliberately slowing down to see how management handled struggling employees. The results were worse than he expected. "Hey, old man," Rick's voice boomed across the warehouse. "Are you serious with this pace? My grandmother could stack shelves faster than you." Daniel straightened, lifting another box onto the pallet. He wasn't even that slow, but Rick had already chosen him as his next target. "I'm doing my best," Daniel said evenly. Rick scoffed. "Your best? Pathetic." He turned to the other employees, smirking. "Looks like we got a real winner here, folks." "You think we're running a charity, Carter?" Daniel clenched his jaw. He had run this company for over 20 years. He had started in warehouses just like this one, working his way up. He knew what hard work looked like. And this? This was pure abuse. Rick sighed dramatically, crossing his arms. "You're useless. Get out of my warehouse." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're fired," Rick smirked. "You're too slow, and I don't have time for dead weight." The entire warehouse fell silent. Some employees looked nervous, others seemed amused, but no one dared to stand up for him. Daniel exhaled slowly, hiding the storm brewing inside him. He took off his cap, dusted off his uniform, and smirked. "All right," he said casually, "but before I go, let's call the owner and see what he thinks." Rick laughed. "The owner? Buddy, the CEO wouldn't waste a second on you." Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed a number. And right then and there, everything changed. Rick folded his arms, smirking as Daniel held the phone to his ear. "What, calling your mommy to complain?" he mocked. The other workers snickered, but some looked uneasy. Something about Daniel's calm demeanor didn't sit right. Then a phone rang. Not Daniel's, Rick's. The shift manager frowned and pulled out his phone. When he saw the caller ID, his smirk disappeared instantly. It read, "CEO Daniel Carter." Rick's face drained of color. His hands trembled as he answered. "Yes, sir?" Daniel casually placed his own phone back in his pocket. The entire warehouse fell into stunned silence. "Surprised?" Daniel asked, his voice smooth but laced with authority. Rick staggered back. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The other employees looked at each other in shock. One brave worker whispered, "Wait, what's going on?" Daniel turned to face the entire staff. His disguise was gone. Now he stood before them as their boss. "Let me introduce myself properly," Daniel said, his voice echoing through the warehouse. "My name is Daniel Carter, I own this company, and for the past 2 weeks I've been undercover in my own business." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some employees stepped back. Others leaned in, completely stunned. Rick's hands started shaking. "Sir, I didn't know." Daniel cut him off. His expression had no mercy. "You fired me for being too slow, Rick," Daniel said, his voice razor sharp. "So tell me, what exactly do you think happens next?" Rick gulped. The entire room was waiting for Daniel's next words. And what he said next would change everything. Rick swallowed hard, his confidence completely shattered. The man he had humiliated, the one he had fired in front of everyone, owned the entire company. "Sir," Rick stammered, forcing a nervous chuckle, This is just a misunderstanding." Daniel tilted his head. "Oh? So when you mocked me, insulted my work ethic, and fired me in front of my employees, what exactly did you misunderstand?" Rick's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The warehouse workers stood completely still, watching their manager crumble under the weight of his actions. "I should fire you right now," Daniel said, stepping closer, his voice calm but full of authority. Rick flinched. "Sir, Please, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just keeping the team motivated. Daniel let out a sharp laugh. Motivated? He turned to the workers. Tell me, how many of you feel motivated under Rick's leadership? No one spoke. Then one voice broke the silence. He yells at us all the time, a young employee muttered. Treats us like trash. Another worker hesitated, then spoke up. He cuts hours if we don't work fast enough, but no matter how hard we try, it's never good enough. Daniel nodded slowly, exactly what he had suspected. He turned back to Rick. Anything else you'd like to say? Rick's face was a mess of panic and desperation. Sir, I can do better. I'll change, I swear. Daniel's gaze hardened. No, you won't. Rick let out a strangled noise. Please. Daniel turned to security. Escort him out. Two guards stepped forward. Rick tried to protest, but they grabbed his arms and started dragging him out of the warehouse. His voice cracked as he shouted, You can't do this. You need me. Daniel's expression remained unmoved. I need leaders, Rick, not tyrants. The doors slammed shut behind Rick, and just like that, he was gone. A heavy silence hung in the air. The workers had never seen justice delivered so fast. Then Daniel took a deep breath and turned back to them. I'm not here just to fire bad managers, he said. I'm here to fix what's broken. The workers exchanged glances. Some were still in shock. Others looked hopeful. One brave voice spoke up. How do you plan to fix it, sir? Daniel smiled slightly. By starting with all of you. A wave of silence washed over the warehouse as everyone waited for Daniel's next words. They had spent years under a toxic system where speaking up meant losing hours, or worse, losing their job. But now, the owner himself was standing in front of them, ready to make things right. Daniel's gaze swept across the workers. I built this company from the ground up. When I started, I worked in warehouses just like this one. I know what hard work looks like. Murmurs spread through the crowd. No CEO had ever spoken to them like this. Daniel continued, his voice firm but sincere. I came here undercover because I needed to see for myself what was happening, and what I found is unacceptable. A young worker hesitated, then spoke up. Sir, is anything actually going to change? Daniel's jaw tightened. Yes, and it starts today. He turned to a woman in the front row. What's your name? The woman blinked in surprise. Maria. Daniel nodded. Maria, how long have you worked here? 5 years, sir. And how many raises have you received? Maria let out a bitter laugh. None. A few workers snickered knowingly. Others looked down, frustrated. Daniel's expression darkened. That ends now. He looked at the entire staff. Starting today, wages will be reviewed and adjusted fairly. No more unpaid overtime, no more threats of lost hours. Gasps filled the room. Some workers exchanged wide-eyed glances. One man folded his arms. And managers like Rick? Daniel's smirk returned. Replaced. Effective immediately. A slow clap started from the back, then another. Within seconds, the entire warehouse erupted into applause. For the first time in years, they felt valued, respected, heard. Daniel took a deep breath, then smiled. This company was built on hard work. It's time you all get the respect you deserve. As he looked around the room at the faces of real people whose lives would change, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning.